made this with 4 yards of crepe, or you can use chiffon or any soft fabric that would bring out the flowing effect. So on my pattern paper, I have marked out my vertical dimensions. Okay, if you followed my previous video on basic bodice pattern, you should understand what I did here. The link to that video will be attached to the description of this one. So for this, I'll quickly run through a few explanations on what I've marked out here. So this is my shoulder line. I measured 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and for the neckline I have used 3.5 for the width and 4 inches for the depth of the neckline. This is the armhole line for the front pattern. Remember, we'll have to come in to create the front armhole. If you follow that video, you will understand everything about this. And this is the bust line. Here is my under bust. And this is the waistline. Here I marked my hip line. Okay, so on my basic bodice pattern, the measurements stops at the hip line. So now for this palazzo, I've extended it a little bit to mark my knee length. It's very simple to measure this. Just run the tape through from your shoulder, nape of your shoulder to your kneecap, and you will get this knee line. Then this is the full length of the palazzo, and it measures 62 inches. I actually made it 62 because I would like it to flow. My actual full length is 61, so you can add about 2 inches or 1 or even 3 inches depending on how you want it to flow, how long you want it to be. So I added 1.5 inches for the hemming allowance. Okay, that's what you can see there. So far that's the dimensions I've marked here. So we'll just go straight to draft the palazzo pattern. We'll impute the horizontal dimensions on these lines I've marked. Okay, let me also mention that I left out 4 inches on the center front. Okay, this will help me to extend my crotch for the palazzo. As we go on, you will understand how this comes in handy. Now for the bust line, the bust point measurement is 44 inches, that's the bust circumference. And since this pattern portrays the 1/4 of the entire palazzo, okay, so that's like dividing the circumference into 4. So I'll be marking everything in 1/4 of the entire circumference. So the bust circumference is 40 inches, and I'm going to mark 10 inches here, which is 1/4 of the entire bust circumference. Now the waistline, the waist circumference is 36 inches, and 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. I've marked that there as well. The hip circumference is 44 inches, and 44 divided by 4 is 11 inches. I've marked that here as well. Now to derive my crotch depth, I'm going to divide the hip circumference by 4. Okay, so dividing 44 by 4, I get 11 inches. So I'm going to apply 11 inches on the crotch depth if I'm making a normal pant, you know. So fine, but because I'm making a palazzo, I'm taking this measurement from my waistline to the crotch depth. Okay, so from this waistline, instead of applying 11 inches, I'll add extra 3 inches. That's because I want it to be free. You can even add up to 3.5 or even 4 inches to bring out the beauty of this jumpsuit. And I'll also apply my 11 inches hip circumference down here. Okay, so I've applied 11 inches at this point, and this becomes my crotch depth. So let me just connect this point to my crotch depth. So I'll now mark this as my crotch. Now I'll have to add a little extension to this to create out my thigh circumference. So the measurement around my thigh is 26 inches. So I'm going to divide that 26 inches by 2. Okay, I divided all the measurements of both these plates, I divided by 4. But at the crotch depth, I'm dividing the thigh circumference by 2. Okay, don't forget that. So now my thigh circumference is 26. So dividing 26 by 2 is 13 inches. So I'm going to apply that on this point. This has created a crotch line for me here. So there's an extension on the center front to create my crotch extension. Okay, so that's just the point I'm going to mark here. So if you measure this, is 2 inches. Okay, so it's like 2 inches extension at the front. Now use my French curve to curve this into the actual center front. I hope you're following what I'm doing. It's actually very easy to achieve this. So I'll now connect this point to the hem of my jumpsuit, okay? So it's going to be a straight line from this point to that hem. So I'll just add 1 inch for ease allowance on the crotch and on the hip line. Okay. I'm just adding ease allowance on the hip line and on the crotch. Then I'll connect a straight line from those 2 points down to the hem of the pants. So now just link up these points. So with this we can see that the front pattern is almost ready. This pattern is going to have a side dart. Okay, so and the side darts, to apply the side dart, we'll just measure 2 inches from the bust line down. Okay, so these 2 inches will be for our side dart. Then we'll also apply our bust span. The bust span is the distance between the 2 nipples, okay? So it's also called the nipple to nipple measurement. And the bust span here is 9 inches. So we're applying half of that here to form our apex, okay? I've created the apex down here, which is 4.5 inches. And I'm going ahead to apply the same 4.5 across the entire length of this pattern. Okay, so I'll just connect those points with my ruler. This will help me to create my darts. Okay. So this is the original point for my darts. So since I'm using a side dart for this, I'll just measure 1/2 inch towards the armhole. That's on the bust point. From the apex, I've measured 1 inch towards the armhole, and I'm going to connect that point to the 2 inches I marked below the bust line. So this is what I'm going to be using for my side dart. I'll quickly shape that out, and so that's it for my side dart. So now I'll extend this point I marked. I'll extend it even beyond this point. To add the fullness I want, okay? So I've just extended that point down to the hem of my pattern. Now that we're done with the front pattern, we're going to be creating out our back pattern on this same pattern paper. But the difference we're going to use to mark the difference is to use a different color of marker. Okay, so I'm using a black marker to create out my back pattern. First, we're going to be doing the neckline. Okay, so for the neckline, I'm going to use 1.5 inch for the back neckline. So, but I'm using the same width for the back neckline, and I'm going to link these points up. So you can as well use 1 inch for this back neckline. So I'm linking it up like so. Then the armhole, you know that the back armhole, you don't usually come in the way you do for the front one. So I'm marking at the exact point I marked my shoulder line. So that's for my back armhole. So I'm going to mark it in from this point. Okay, so the back pattern will have a zipper allowance, which I'm going to use 1.5 inches for my zipper allowance. You can actually use 1 inch for these bolts.